So we welcome to the program now, kicking off the afternoon portion, Senator Nicole Akins-Boyd represents District 9, which includes Lafayette and Panola counties. I'm not going to talk about your chair assignments yet because we don't know where that's going to be yet,
We
right?
have no idea. We're all waiting.
Yeah.
So.
Well, we appreciate you coming on. So a little commotion down there at the Capitol this morning.
We had a little commotion at the Capitol. As we understand, they called in a bomb threat, so we got notified very early, do not come to the Capitol because they are sweeping the building. And we later have found out that there were bomb threats called into Georgia and Kentucky, Connecticut, and I'm told one more. So
Montana, right?
Yeah.
Rhino? Did you list that one? I wasn't sure. So I think,
yeah. So anyway, so I think we got that this morning, but Capitol Security was great to Capitol Police let us know quickly, do not come in.
Yeah.
And so they did a massive sweep of the building, and they have given us the all clear to go. We're moved our time to 2 o'clock today, so we'll go in today.
Okay.
So,
and Representative Becky Curry was on the program earlier. You've got some statewide elected officials that have to go through their ceremonious swearing in today, right?
Yes, we'll do that, and we'll do some of it tomorrow too, and look at. We're very excited about it today at 2 o'clock. So we'll get everybody sworn in and all official, and then we'll have the governor next Tuesday. And but we are down here, but we're all viciously right now trying to work on our legislation, trying to get it ready to go. Looking at drafts from drafting right now.
Okay.
And meeting with everybody, trying to get those bills in line. So,
what's the schedule on making the committee chair appointments and assignments?
We have not been given a schedule. I know the House actually just asked for it because they couldn't do it earlier because they only officially elected their speaker yesterday. They asked for the committee interest forms to be turned in by this Friday.
Okay.
So it should take them a little bit of time to kind of fetter through that. The Senate, we did that process back in November, I think it was, where we turned in, or maybe it was December that we turned in our preferences. And so I don't know when the lieutenant governor is set to announce that at this point.
Okay.
So.
All right. Well, so here we go. I did see that, is there like a new committee the lieutenant governor announced, an efficiency committee or something to that effect?
It's a governance committee, and it's going to look at state government from what we understand. There was a lot of talk last session, a lot of questions that came up as to why we have certain agencies that we do, how it's organized that we do. And sometimes the way we've done it in the past is not the most efficient process.
Yeah.
We have duplicity in some of the things that we're doing. And so there's no need in that. And so I'm hoping, didn't give very many details yesterday, but I'm very hopeful that this committee will really fetter out where we've got those inefficiencies in state government, and we can do hopefully some really kind of reorganize some things where they need to be reorganized and get a better system in place. So.
Of course, anytime that should involve the elimination of staff, that's always a very controversial issue.
We have eliminated a great deal of staff over this past 4 years.
Yeah.
We have done that and we have eliminated a tremendous amount of state pens. And to the listeners out there who don't know what a state pen is, it's basically the position. Yeah. And so we had a numerous amounts of state pens that were not filled.
Yeah, not being filled.
They were not being filled, and so we got rid of those.
Yep.
And so we have done a great job over the last 4 years of really trimming down government best that we could. And so we have really worked on that, and so I'm really optimistic of what we have a lot of boards and commissions.
Boy, don't we?
I mean, and the question is,
it's a full-time job to appoint them for the governor's office.
Yes, and so the question is, do we need that many boards and commissions? Maybe if they have a super specialty, they need to be there, but there's some that could be merged and combined. And as this process has gone on this past 4 years, we found out some boards and commissions that aren't doing a great job. And I don't want to call them out today, but I think you'll see that maybe those boards and commissions need to be merged, and we need to find, a better way to do these things. Okay. So, and it's probably something we should be continuously looking at in government.
Absolutely.
I think that's why it's a good permanent committee. We need to always be looking at our efficiencies, just like any private entity.
Sure.
Yeah, just like any private major corporation would do. They had parts of their organization that look at efficiencies.
Yeah.
And so I think it's a smart move on the lieutenant governor's part to really do this committee.
We call it BPR, Business Process Reengineering, by the way. Is a term that we often use in the private sector. And there are other acronyms to refer to that procedure as well, if you will. But okay, so good. I think there's some opportunities there. I'm going to mention something that's kind of small, but it's always been a hang-up with me that I think could help us in this arena, and that is the law that currently exists in Mississippi that prohibits a public sector entity from absorbing credit card fees. And the reason I say I think that's something we ought to repeal that would go a long way towards achieving efficiencies is that, as you well know, there are a lot of people that could transact with the state or their city or county online if they didn't have to absorb those credit card fees. And my guess is we need a whole lot fewer people in buildings to deal with those transactions than we do now.
And I will tell you, I actually have approached, particularly after the pandemic, because we had more people doing that, and I had my local entities approach. And basically what came down from the lawyers is that would be a donation. And so we have a constitutional provision in the Constitution.
A constitutional provision.
So the constitutional provision so it might be something we need to make a constitutional change on those particular credit card fees. But they did come down that, talking with the lawyers, it was a problem because that would be considered then a donation.
What in the world is that doing in the Constitution?
Well, donations are prohibited.
I get it.
So anyway, but it is something that my local government entities approached me about.
Okay.
And so I was like, guys, we got to change this. This is illogical.
It's ridiculous. I mean, paying property taxes, renewing car tax, all those kinds of transactions. And, when the deadline's around, this, all the offices, the tax collector offices in the state got lines.
Yeah. Exactly. So that's what. So we absolutely have. We are continuously looking at that and trying to push the envelope and say, okay, is that really a donation? So.
Well, I'm encouraging you to continue to work on that issue.
We will do that. So.
I honestly do think that could help. All right, so lots of I think high-profile issues that pretty much everybody knows about that the legislature is gonna take up. What's on your radar?
Well, I'm going to continue. Chaired the Women, Children, and Families Committee last year.
Yeah.
We did 11 pieces of legislation. We got passed in one session on those particular issues. I'm going to continue looking at that. We're going to let some of those laws take effect and see how they pan out and do that. But then we also did a lot of work this summer, even during an election year. We really had some great committee processes going on. We had an early intervention task force, and I have to give a shout out to all these citizens that serve on these task force. We had 3 different ones going on. We had a youth court task force, we had an adoption foster care task force, and we had an early intervention task force. And those citizens from around the state do that. There's no money, there's no per diem. They work, and our committees worked really hard this summer on those 3 particular issues.
Yeah.
So we're going to do some probably technical changes on adoption and foster care so we can move those children out of the foster care system faster, get them to permanent homes faster. They recommended a lot of technical changes to do that. So I think those will be forthcoming. On the early intervention system, we hopefully will continue that task force. We know that we have kind of a broken early intervention system, and we are working directly with the health department, and they have stepped up and made some significant changes and are continuing to make those changes. Dr. Edney has showed great leadership in that, and we are all working to do that. So hopefully that task force will continue so that we can really make that system a much better system and serve those children earlier, which we'll know will lead to a lot of changes.
Yeah, it's it's one of those things I think that's not well known by the public, that whole world.
Right.
And if you have the opportunity to hear Andrea Sanders, who runs Child Protective Services, talk, it'll shake you to the core.
It will. And she does a tremendous job doing this, and she's really behind pushing a lot of these changes.
You can hang around with us for another segment. We got
Senator
Nicole Akins-Boyd in the Element Wealth Studio. We're coming right back. Element Wealth Studio. We're visiting with Senator Nicole Akins-Boyd. It's day 2 of the legislative session, and now that it looks like we got the bomb threat over with, you guys can get back down to the building and conduct business. So I know that you've served on committees involving families and health care in the past. You've got some background in that as an attorney, your husband a physician, you have some exposure. You probably end up, don't you think, in some capacity in those committees? Is that kind of what you expect?
I have at this point, we have no way of knowing, but I'll always, no matter if I'm on a committee or not on that, I'm going to be working kind of in this arena. Have a background, too, also in working in public health initiatives and making systemic changes in the state that is unhealthy.
Yeah.
And how we do that. And there's so many social factors too that enter into this. It's a complex problem that has to be approached really with very complex solutions. And so I'm looking forward to, I think this is very important. I think the Lieutenant Governor has continued to emphasize his efforts to make sure that we are looking at our health crisis. The speaker yesterday indicated that he was dedicated to looking at that.
He did.
And so we saw the governor do something about that this summer and looking at hospitals. So I think we have a mission from, undoubtedly 3 of our state's most important leaders that they are all looking at our healthcare issues. So, and you have to think of healthcare too, not just in health, but you also have to think of all the things that it impacts. So, in November, you and I have talked many times about our labor force participation rate.
Yep.
The lowest in the country.
It is, yeah.
And now by a larger percentage of we're not close to anybody almost in that percentage area. So we kind of teetered back and forth with West Virginia, and they are surpassing us. So what is causing this? And health is a factor that I think plays into this. So we've got to really, that is the thing that as a state, we have got to move that number of our labor force participation rate.
Yeah.
When you think about it right now, we have half the people supporting the other half of the people.
That's right.
And so
effectively, that's right.
Effectively, that's what it is. Yeah. So we have got to move that portion of the a greater percentage of our population into looking at that. And the thing, too, that's really interesting about this, and I think I've said this time and time again on here, is, we have these opinions about who this is not working and who's working or whatever. One of the most interesting statistics to me is our single mother labor force participation rate is always 20 points higher than our general population.
Interesting. So you can't really attribute it to that. They're staying at home being a mother, essentially.
No. So, and especially our single mothers, they are out there trying to work, trying to get better jobs. And so that's stuff that we really looked at last year. Because of that, that's stuff that we really looked at last year because we want to continue to help those that are trying to work. And so we looked at childcare, things that businesses could do to help families with childcare. We looked at some tax credits, some things like that we could do that with. And that's something we're going to probably continue to do because these are people actually trying to work.
I think the question is, employers all over the place are looking for people. It just seems like, and I know we have some systems to do that we could improve the way in which we match up those that are not looking for work or not working with people that are looking for workers. And something else I've thought about, Senator, is I wonder if it makes sense just to commission somebody, some group, to go into these communities to find these people who are on the sidelines and say, how come you're not working?
Well, and, one of the things that I'm really pleased with this program and having it involved in really changing community health indicators. This is something that's I think is a really good program that the state has really impacted on. And I've seen these career coaches that are now going into your high schools.
CTE especially.
Yes. Yeah. What they're doing, though, is they're going into the high schools and they're really targeting those children who maybe wouldn't be actively going into the workforce.
Yeah. And
they're looking at those kids who maybe's families are not really engaged hard in the workforce. And they're really targeting those children and making sure that those those kids are actively getting into the workforce if they're not going on to higher education, and making sure they get that training and stuff like that. The stories that you are hearing from those career coaches are phenomenal. What you're also hearing as an ancillary effect too is then a parent may get involved more in the workforce when the child gets more involved in the workforce. So it's having a trickle effect among that family. So I do like, and you hear these anecdotally. There's not been, quantitative research on it, but we get a lot of qualitative stories from that. And so that has been a really successful program. You can see that we're doing across the state.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. So, I'm really excited about that. I'll tell you another thing too on that's really kind of interesting is I was at Toyota and I was at GE plant in my area. And did you know that both of those national employers, these plants in Mississippi have the largest female workforce of any of their plants in the country?
I'll be darned.
And so I have heard that is not that unusual from some of our other plants in the country that have big national plants. So
didn't know that.
Yeah. So it's very
fascinating.
Yeah, it's fascinating. So Toyota is putting in a child care center. To really make sure that, and not just for women, but for the men as well, to make sure that they have full 24/7 childcare opportunities for their employers.
That's cheaper than them staying home.
Exactly.
When they have those issues.
Yeah. So we're excited to kind of see what.
It's a good benefit.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's without government.
Exactly.
So it's the private sector saying, we think this is a reasonable benefit. We get value out of this.
Exactly. And the things we're talking about really in workforce, they're not going to all come from government. We've got to intrinsically change somebody's drive and motivation and ambition. And I'm hoping that churches, I'm hoping that communities will reach out and say, hey, we got to all get back to work.
Yeah. Totally agree. And that's why I'm wondering if it doesn't make sense just to confront people and say, well, how come you're not working? I mean, it's their jobs here. There's plenty of them here. And it then makes you wonder, are you getting so many benefits that you're able to subsist just with that? Because I don't see that it amounts to a whole lot, honestly.
I don't.
Especially in our state.
Well, and I don't. And our state has the highest percentage of people on disability.
Yeah.
And so you do wonder what healthcare issues have related to that. How much of it is mental health?
Yeah.
And so those are things that we're going to have to find the answer to.
Agree.
I don't know the answers right now, but we got to find the answers if we're going to raise that labor force participation rate.
Yep.
And we've got to do this for us as a state to succeed.
All right, a couple of other things that are a little outside of that realm that I think the people are certainly looking for is the ballot measure process.
Yes.
You got any thoughts about that?
Well, I had a meeting this morning.
Okay.
Interesting that you say that. So I had a breakfast meeting this morning with a couple other senators and really looking at the nuances of what we're going to propose again. We'll be proposing that again this year.
Okay.
And seeing where we can get, if we can get further than we did last year on it. And so we met this morning, and we're kind of going through some stuff right now, kind of making a final determination what that legislation will propose will look like.
Okay. So, education freedom. I know you represent a district with very high performing schools.
I do.
Public schools specifically. So any thoughts about that? You know, the speaker looks to get something going, at least in discussion, to expand what we have presently in the state of Mississippi.
Well, and I when everybody says these choices, education freedom, school choice, there's a whole gamut.
That's right.
Of what that looks like in there. And we've got some school choice right now with some of the educational scholarships, particularly those with special needs.
Special needs, and dyslexia.
And I have a passion for trying to help those with special needs.
Yep.
I kind of, as we're having this discussion, though, I want us to all think about accountability because I'm pretty concerned right now with our charter schools.
Yep.
We have, of our charter schools, only one of those is a C. The rest are D and Fs.
Yeah.
And if we're going to be doing that, if we're going to be spending taxpayer money, we need to see better results from those charter schools. And so I have great concerns that, especially if a charter school is in a district where the public school is performing higher than that charter school is.
Yeah.
And so I've got huge concerns right now about what's going on with that. So I want to see better accountability, and I hope that we're doing that. But the other thing, too, is we're having all those discussions. Just like healthcare, we've discussed it's going to take a vast last thing, we also need to really be delving into our lower performing public schools.
Okay.
And we've had vast improvement. 91%, if you take out the charter schools, are performing at a C or better right now.
I know.
So,
I'm going to ask you a quick question because we got to go.
Yeah.
Are you concerned that there's maybe a little bit of inflation going on with respect to those measurements? Because there's been some concerns expressed about that.
I have been asking the Department of Education those particular questions, and they are getting back to me on that.
Okay.
So, yes.
And we got a new superintendent that you guys will have to approve here pretty soon.
Exactly.
Confirm.
We look forward to having those confirmation hearings.
Always good to see you, Senator. Appreciate you coming on, and let's have a good session. I know we'll be talking some more.
Good deal. Thank you.
We're coming right back, folks, in the Element Well studio. Half an hour of middays remaining.